My name is Nicholas Whyte. I'm a Senior Director in APCO's Global Solutions Practice, and I'm here to tell you about 3 European elections to watch in the year 2018. The first election to watch in Europe next year is the Russian presidential election, whose first round is due to take place on the 18th of March. If there is a second round, it will take place a little later, but nobody really expects there to be a second round. It'll be very surprising if President Putin is not re-elected for a fourth term. He's been president of Russia off and on since 1999, with a 4-year gap between 2008 and 2012. But the interesting thing is going to be the performance of the opposition candidate, Alexei Navalny, who seems to have caught a certain zeitgeist among Russian civil society and even to an extent the business community. How he performs is going to tell us quite a lot about how Russian society is developing, how the government decides to deal with this challenge, whether they allow him to run his course or whether the election is marred by poor behaviour from the authorities. That will tell us a great deal about what sort of state Russia wants to be in its relationship with its people. For my second election, I'm looking south at Italy, where the next parliamentary election must take place no later than the 20th of May. And in Italy, of course, the Democratic Party, led at the moment by Paolo Gentiloni, is defending the victory that it won in 2013. They've had 3 different leaders since then. The election, at the time of the last election, the leader was Enrico Letta. Matteo Renzi then took over for a couple of years, and Gentiloni has been in power since last December. The Democratic Party and the populist Five Star Movement are chasing each other very, very tightly for top spot in the opinion polls. They're both in the high 20s in terms of percentages. Some way behind them, in the mid-teens, are Silvio Berlusconi's Forza Italia and also the Lega Nord. So there will be a coalition of some kind. Who is going to be in that coalition is going to depend not just on the voters, but on the operation of the new Italian election system, where there are going to be a lot more votes, a lot more seats which are elected in the first-past-the-post system. That tends to favour large parties, and it tends to favour parties with a strong regional base. So one would expect that the Lega Nord will do better than Forza Italia out of that, but again, it's all in the hands of the voters. And this is important because the PD are the strongest left-wing party in Europe at the moment, and their fate is going to determine which direction Europe takes in the following few years. For my third election, I'm going to go to Sweden, where the parliamentary election must take place on the 9th of September. In Sweden, as in Italy, we have a centre-left government that is defending its position. The current government is a coalition between the Social Democrats, who have been in power for most of the last century and a half in Sweden, and the Greens, who are a relatively new party. Now, in the opinion polls, the Social Democrats are still in the lead in the high 20s. Chasing each other for second place are the Conservative Party, whose name, interestingly, is the Moderates, and the more populist Swedish Democrats, both of them on around 20%. At the moment, the Moderates are slightly ahead and the Swedish Democrats slightly below, but that's not been the case for the last few months. They're playing nip and tuck. Further down the list, the Swedish Parliament has an electoral threshold of 4%. At the moment, the hard-left Venstre party is comfortably ahead of that, on around 7%. But the Greens, who are in the government, and the Liberals, who are not, are just over 4%, not quite at 5%. So they should just scrape into the new parliament. Meanwhile, the Christian Democrats are well below. So again, it's going to be a coalition, but whether it's centre-left or centre-right could turn on just a handful of votes at the lower end of the political spectrum. I know I said I was going to talk about 3 elections in Europe in 2018, but there is another one that will be much more important than any of the other 3 if it takes place, and that's the election that could happen in Germany if Chancellor Merkel's attempts to construct a coalition government fail. Germany is quite simply the most important country in Europe. The uncertain outcome of the 2017 election has left a bit of a power vacuum at the centre of the continent, and a new election could well set the course of Europe for decades to come, never mind for years.